feel trapped in...
Good morning, everyone. About 10 minutes before the top of the hour, I'm Marshall Seas. You're tuned in time for Storm Watch, in which we also discuss the tropics. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about with tropical, what was once tropical storm Francis, still kicking up the moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico into the midsection of the country. Now, Francis is not alone in helping send this moisture into the mid-Mississippi Valley and the Central Plains. High pressure that has been anchored over the eastern seaboard is the other culprit. High pressure right over Georgia and South Carolina, and with clockwise rotation around that high and low pressure out in the plains, both of these just creating a virtually unlimited moisture pump out of the Gulf of Mexico. So it is really going to be a rainy day, lots of flooding possible in Missouri and in Illinois today. The focus of all that flooding a little further north than it was yesterday, although we'll still have rain bands moving in out of the Gulf of Mexico toward Louisiana and into Mississippi. Here's some of the totals now over the last 4 days, ended about 1 o'clock this morning. Parts of the city of New Orleans, over 17 inches of rain, 12 inches in New Orleans at one reporting station. Biloxi's had almost a foot. Now we're adding these to the total, and these two totals for Chanute, Kansas, and Richards Air Force Base south of Kansas City. These are since yesterday afternoon when the rain moved in. These will be substantially higher, too, later today. We have flash flood watches out here in Missouri, Oklahoma, and Louisiana again, also northwestern Arkansas. This is what's left of Francis. We think Francis itself is just about in this area of Oklahoma. It has weakened somewhat, but we have a weakness that extends from northern Texas into northern Illinois today. And out ahead of that weakness, a lot of moisture. And it's been falling in the form of rain from Tulsa to Fort Smith and Fayetteville, Arkansas, in a band of about 125 to 150 miles wide of moisture. We still have coastal flood advisories, warnings from Pascagoula, Mississippi to High Island, Texas, all because of this situation. So Tropical Storm Charlie, if you remember, moved into Texas, brought heavy rain, and then we had Earl created problems, and now Francis creating major problems along the Gulf Coast and now northward through the Mississippi Valley. Notice how this is connected right across Mexico. It's a broad and elongated trough of low pressure, and at one end of it you have the remnants of Javier over in the eastern Pacific, and then in the Gulf of Mexico, convection that wants to fire up every day, it seems, and pressures out here are about 1,005 millibars. It's plenty low for something to develop, but what's left of outflow from Francis is bringing some northerly shear across the Gulf of Mexico and into the Caribbean, so nothing could really get its act together to get going. But some of the computer models are indicating there may be something that'll get going out here in the western Caribbean or in the Gulf of Mexico, perhaps as soon as the next 48 to 60 hours. But we have to get rid of the shearing environment first. We have the water temperatures where we need them. We have upper level high pressure. Conditions are ripe for tropical storm formation. But anything out here in the near term, not likely to develop, but over the longer term could be some development. So you want to monitor the situation with us closely over the next several days. As we take a trip a little further out into the Atlantic, toward the Lesser Antilles, you will see some scattered showers and thunderstorms that have been occurring out here in the Lesser Antilles associated with a wave of low pressure, or a tropical wave that is moving to the east. But that's about it. Tropical storm formation and not imminent at all. A couple of things off the African coast, though. Look at this one. Almost looks like some banding around this, too, doesn't it? This could become a tropical depression later today. Right now, it's drifting northward. Came off Africa about 24 to 36 hours ago. Pressure seems to be about 1,007 millibars. There's been a ship in the area, but winds have not been a major factor. Now, we don't know exactly where that ship is located as it pertains to the center of circulation. But this could drift to the north and then back to the northeast toward Africa. Now we have another impressive wave. It looks like it had some circulation coming off the coast of Africa. This one could move this direction. We have a trough that influenced this one that carried it to the north. That trough looks like it'll have less influence on this. This could be the next system for development. Meanwhile, there's Javier, just remnants, no further development, and we have Tropical Storm Stella, will be a typhoon later today, could come close to Tokyo.
The remnants of Tropical Storm Francis bring showers and flooding to areas from the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes, where the rain may be headed next on Weather Center.
Put you in
a new GMC Yukon
Denali. No payments ever.
Visit any Red Roof Inn before October 31st and enter to win a new
Yukon Denali. And the price?
I'm giving it away.
No payments ever. Hey, imagine.
Yeah.
I'll do this. A new Yukon Denali from Red Roof Inn.
Plus, you could win a year's worth of
AT&T prepaid calling.
Every guest gets a free AT&T prepaid.
Thank you for joining us for Storm Watch. I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. Flood watches continue for parts of Missouri, Kansas, and Texas as the remnants of Francis move northward. But now we're focusing our attention much farther south and much farther east. Your tropical update begins with a look at what's happening in the tropical Atlantic. And as we take a look across the Atlantic, we do see a couple of areas of concern. One is way out here in the East Atlantic. That's a low pressure. That's up to the northwest of the Cape Verde Islands. That is moving north towards cooler waters, and that will not be a threat to anybody watching this broadcast, that is for sure. But down to the south, just off the edge of the screen, there's a new area of disturbed weather that has come off the coast of Africa, and that has the potential to become a significant player in the tropics. So we'll show you that in just a second. Closing in on what's happening here, just to the east of the Bahamas, we do see a little swirl right here. That is like a mid-level circulation around an upper low pressure, the upper low itself, spinning over here, just east of the Bahamas. So this feature does have a little bit of a ways to go. And if it was to try to develop, it probably would move northward and then get pulled out to sea. So we're not too concerned about it at the present time. As we get into the Gulf of Mexico, look at the moisture. It's streaming northward into southeast Texas. Yes, the moisture has returned to southeast Texas. The moisture plume has just shifted ever so slightly westward. Now we're seeing heavy rains coming into eastern Harris County, Liberty County, and Chambers County, and the rainfall rates 2 to 3 inches per hour. So we still have problems with rain here as the moisture continues to stream up to the north in the wake of what was once Tropical Storm Francis. This area will be watched for signs of redevelopment later on this week. Right now we have a northerly flow, and that will inhibit any type of tropical development. But as a weak area of low pressure in the upper atmosphere here near the Keys drifts its way westward, that will allow some of this energy and disturbed weather to come up from the Caribbean. And there are indications that these northerly winds will diminish, and by the latter part of the week we may try to get a weak area of low pressure trying to develop near the Yucatan. That has not developed yet, but there's a chance that could happen later on in the week. So we want to keep an eye on this area. But right now there is nothing organized, and there's still a long ways to go. Around Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, pretty tranquil conditions. Not too much happening here, but over here in the East Atlantic, we do see the two areas concerned. One, this low pressure west of the Cape Verdes, that's moving north. And as you can see, that's not going to be a threat to any land areas. While down to the south, coming off the coast of Africa, a strong tropical wave. Hurricane Center says there's a weak area low pressure associated with that. You can see the turning on the clouds. Does already appear to be some upper outflow with that. So this does have the potential to develop over the next couple of days. So this will be the key feature that we'll be watching over the next 12 to 24 hours. As we take you through the graph of the hurricane season. Keep in mind, we're right here in September, still a very active time in the tropics. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be watching these disturbances very closely because this is the time of the year that things tend to develop. In the tropical East Pacific, things have quieted down. Remnants of the old tropical system Javier over here, and well south of the Hawaiian Islands, weak area of disturbed weather, tropical disturbance, that is not expected to develop into much of anything. In the Far East, here is Japan. Iwo Jima's had some pretty heavy rains and high winds over the weekend with tropical storm Stella. Stella is forecast to become a minimal hurricane or typhoon and then brush up the east coast of Japan over the next 24 to 36 hours. So if you're planning a business trip over to Tokyo, you could get wet and encounter some rather windy conditions. Now, closer to home, remnants of Francis have moved northward. Tropical moisture has been deposited over here in southeast Kansas, southwest Missouri. 5 to 10 inches of rain fell here overnight. Lots of streams and rivers overflowing their banks, and we've had problems on the area roads here in northeast Oklahoma with heavy rains here too. Latest radar shows the moisture plume is shifted slightly eastward, so these areas are getting a little bit of a breather, while to the north, rain edging towards Chicagoland. West side of the city has been wet. In the city and the eastern suburbs, hardly a drop of rain. To the south, there's that rain coming into Texas. More problems bearing down on Houston as flood warnings are coming out on the east side of the city. Stay tuned for updates in the Weather Center.
Wet weather plagues parts of the Mississippi Valley, and more rain is on tap in some areas. When and where showers are likely next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
Well, I've decided. Tonight's the night I'm going to pop the question.
That's great. So did you get the ring yet?
No, I had a better idea. I wanted to get her something that says...
Colombia, Venezuela, getting some showers. Peru, some clouds. And way down around Patagonia, the only place you have to worry about snow showers in the Andes there. But Santiago tomorrow, 72. Buenos Aires as well, 72 degrees. On Storm Watch, we'll take a look at some of the heavy rain in the wake of Tropical Storm Florence. Now on the tropical update, Steve Lyons tells us whether anything else is about to develop. Steve?
Well, thank you, Mike. It's time for the tropical update, and we got rid of Francis. Now it's time to look at another batch of thunderstorm areas that are looking rather interesting here. Here's a long loop of satellite imaging. You can see most of the action of thunderstorms and cloudiness are over here in the western Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico here. I'll tell you what's going on there in just a second as we're looking closer. Let's zoom in there right now. Now we have a couple of things here at work. We have an upper level low here that's got a trough that's formed down here basically across the Florida Straits down toward the Yucatan Peninsula. We also have what we call a confluence asymptote. Basically what that means is the flow's coming out of the southeast here and it's coming out of the southwest there, merging and producing a lot of thunderstorms there in the central and western Gulf of Mexico. We have another feature here, and that is strong southwesterly flow out of the Pacific is coming across the Yucatan Peninsula and across Central America and merging with the trade winds here in the Central Caribbean. And you can see that line of merger right in here, right where it's merging there. You can see thunderstorms developing. This whole westerly surge of air from the Pacific is sort of winding up in here. We expect some weak low pressure center that's already there near the Yucatan Peninsula to push into the Gulf of Mexico the next 24 to 36 hours. So we'll keep you updated on what happens there. Right now it looks like a sort of a disheveled mess of thunderstorms, but you can really see each feature aloft or at the surface that explains it. As an example, this area over here is related to an upper level low, which is right here, and also a surface trough of low pressure that extends down over Puerto Rico as a weak tropical wave that's above the surface. So we'll keep an eye on that one for you as well, but it's remaining relatively weak at this stage. As we go out into the eastern Atlantic, we have two features of interest. One was this low pressure center here that's zooming off to the north rather quickly. This system was a rather vigorous one, and it has a fairly deep circulation to it. That's why it's going against the surface flow off to the north, and it's dragged the surface trough of low pressure around, so we have a northeast southwest oriented trough of low pressure and thunderstorms along that trough. Another feature here is this big tropical low pressure center that's moving from east to west to the south of it, and it's going to continue on that track and then take a little bit more north track as it hits this trough and then continue on to the west. So we'll continue to watch this. It's a long way from anywhere. Here are the Cape Verde Islands here. So we've got 2 or 3 days at least before it's of any concern, even to the Windward Islands. But we'll keep an eye on it for you. Now keep in mind this time of year, we're at the peak of the hurricane season. So if you're not prepared, you better do so quickly. We'll be at the peak for another week or so, and then we'll gradually have a decline, but we're still in the very active period of the tropical season, so be very careful there. Now, another feature of interest we've been looking at here in the Pacific is that our trough of low pressure here that typically forms a lot of the tropical cyclones here in the Pacific has shifted over Central America, associated with all those clouds that we see there. And as a consequence, we really don't see much in the way of tropical cyclone activity at all, just a few isolated thunderstorms, and they're primarily confined along the coast of Central America. So we don't really expect any tropical development here the next 24 to 36 hours, but if we get any, it will be very close to the Central America coast. Farther out, it's just trade wind thunderstorm activity here, which is rather harmless and won't develop into anything at all. Now, another thing we've been looking at in the extreme western Pacific is tropical storm Stella. Here it is here. Here's Japan up here, and the forecast is for this tropical storm to continue on to the northwest. But there's a trough of low pressure here, a frontal boundary. It's going to be very close. It may skirt the edge of Japan as it moves back to the north and then off to the northeast. So we'll have to watch this closely the next couple days. If you're heading out there to the Far East, to Japan, or some of the other islands out here, it ran over Iwo Jima here just earlier today and yesterday and produced some fairly strong winds there. Pay attention to what's going on with this system, and be prepared to bring your umbrella and at least a raincoat, and be prepared for some bad weather on the coast of Japan. Well, let's get back to Mike now and see what thunderstorm activity is associated with the remnants of Francis in the middle of the United States.
Well, thanks a lot, Steve. And we have a 24-hour total here ending this morning of lots of rain around the Sabine River, Louisiana, Texas, 4 inches on the scale once you get into the yellow, 3 to 4. And this area comes in at 5, 6, even some unofficial reports of 11 inches or more of rain coming in south of Kansas City. Bourbon County around Fort Scott in Kansas, some of the roads are still underwater. That's all the moisture from Francis as it keeps on feeding northward into the Great Lakes. But that doesn't stop with the remnants of Francis. We have more moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. There seems to be an unlimited supply down there, and the winds are coming up from that direction, keeping the rain going. Now just getting into Chicago after holding off to the west of Chicagoland most of the day, making it to the state line. Still some heavy rain over southern Wisconsin and parts of lower and upper Michigan, which you can actually use. Could use that rain. South of Interstate 80 in Lincoln, a thunderstorm or two. North Platte, northeast Colorado, these will redevelop into Kansas. And Dallas, you're looking at the rain moving east.
All this atmospheric energy coming together.
Drama, passion, suspense, tropospheric undulations. Every night on Weather Center PM.
I smoke. Got a light? Now, do you see tar stains on my teeth or smell tobacco on my breath?
And once again, we want to start off Storm Watch with a look at the tropics. We're watching a couple of areas, plus we have an update now on Stella, which has been upgraded to a typhoon in the Pacific Ocean. And we'll also wrap it up with a look at severe weather. Now let's check in on the tropics. And first, the broad view, and you can see a lot of showers and thunderstorms continuing across the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico. But nothing right now really catches your eye, and that's what we've been looking at throughout the day here at the Weather Channel. A couple of areas, but nothing really has gotten evolved or has evolved and developed into anything critical at this point. This is one area we continue to watch. Remember, Earl and Francis had their beginnings in the Gulf in the Bay of Campeche. We do have an upper level low here sparking some storms and a lot of clouds across the islands over towards Puerto Rico. And you can see the central Atlantic is very, very quiet. Let's start it off in the Gulf of Mexico, and we still have fairly low pressures out here. Low-level winds are now coming in from the southwest, and it looks like an area of low pressure at the surface is trying to develop here around the Yucatan Peninsula. It's forecast to drift northwest, and a lot of our computer models which simulate the atmosphere in the future, say down the road 2 or 3 days, a lot of them want to form an area of low pressure here again, like we've seen in the past. So what bears watching, but right now nothing to be overly concerned with in the next certainly 24 hours. A lot of showers and thunderstorms through the islands. Again, we've got a dip here in the jet stream and an upper level area of low pressure. That's one of the reasons too we have the showers over parts of the Florida Peninsula during the day on Monday. So we have actually 2 upper lows That's cold air aloft leading to instability. Neither of those expected to develop into anything tropical at this point. If you're watching from the islands, all is clear tonight. Hardly a cloud in the sky. The storms over Puerto Rico again, the reflection of the cooler air aloft. The central Atlantic is very, very quiet. So those of you watching from the Leeward and Windward Islands are in great shape for the next day or so. But down the road, that could change. We've got a couple of disturbances we're watching. This one developed very quickly, but it's scooting off to the north. If it has any impact on land, it would probably be, say, Spain or Portugal, somewhere in those areas of Europe. But certainly it's not heading across the Atlantic. This one, though, is huge circulation coming off the coast of Africa on Sunday night and Monday morning, continuing to move just south of the Cape Verde Islands. And you can see this one has is covering a large geographical area and is going to be watched very closely by our tropical specialist John Hope and Dr. Steve Lyons. But it, again, is several days away from having any impact on the islands. If it holds together, we'll have to find out. It should flare up as it hits this tropical trough here, this monsoon trough out through the Atlantic. We'll find out tomorrow. Meanwhile, remember, the peak of the hurricane season has just passed on the 10th of September, so we're still in the meat of the season, and that's why we have to be very cautious in those areas like the Gulf or anywhere across the warmer waters, because we're still here. And it's really not until we get to the end of the month in October before we start to see things ease off, at least statistically, but we often have a second peak here in the middle part of October. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, nothing happening. We have the remains of Javier around Manzanillo, Mexico, and that has spread heavy rains into the south and southwestern part of that country. A lot of flooding. We've had loss of life due to mudslides in those areas as the rains continue, much like we saw with Francis. Although Francis was downgraded, as with Javier, the moisture remains and the effect can be fatal. Switching gears now to the Pacific, and Stella was a tropical storm, but it was upgraded in the past hour now to Typhoon Stella. Winds of 75 miles an hour, expected to move up towards the north and then maybe hook off to the right as this front across the Asian continent comes off and heads towards Japan. Whether that will pick it up and move it out of harm's way for Tokyo in the next day or so remains to be seen, but this typhoon could have an impact on Tokyo and especially the south and east coast of Japan in the next day or so. We'll keep you posted. Not expected to strengthen anymore, maybe a little bit more, but the forecast now keep it basically at 75 or 80 miles an hour. It's at 75 miles an hour now. It's moving northwest at 16. We'll keep you updated on Stella and the rest of the tropics. Now back at home, we continue to see that flow of moisture. The remnants of Francis bringing more rain overnight towards Chicago, Indianapolis, and down towards the Gulf Coast. Not a whole lot of severe weather expected, maybe one or two gusty thunderstorms in West Texas. But most of what falls will be just plain old rain with a little bit of lightning and thunder. And you can see the rain stretching from the Great Lakes back towards Louisiana. We still have the flood watches in Texas. A closer look at some of those radars where it's been raining tonight comes up next on Weather Center after we take a break and check your local weather forecast.
The central part of the country is still getting a soaking from what's left of Francis. See when the rains will end ahead on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This is Singing Bob saying adios. Till next time.
Singing Bob.
Hey, I'm home.
Dad.
Guess whose ranch got a new furnace today?
Singing Bob. So when you go back, I could go too and ride a trusty horse bullet?
Whoa, son. I won't be going back to Singing Bob's for a long, long time.